Hello, MCR family. It's a little tiny post-fight show. I know it's like a week since the card, but I needed to do a show on this. If the card felt big, plus, you know me, I'm a huge Nate Diaz fanboy, so I got to talk about Nate Diaz. Unfortunately, no Anthony Walker. I should say, fortunately. Trash.
Trash. Big
Trash.
trash. The
Super
whole
trash.
can of trash.
Oh my God, so bad. Dumpster fire trash. So I decided to upgrade and just get Jason Burgos from
Oh,
Sharedog.com.
nice.
You know, Captain Credential himself, and plus, I'll be honest. Like I was with Anthony at the event, so like I know his
Yeah.
opinions, I know his thoughts. I don't care. I want to hear
Yeah.
yours. So let's start
Yeah.
from the top. Obviously, Daniel Cormier defeating Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic defeating Daniel Cormier in really dramatic mid-fight upset fashion. You know, the left shot to the body, right hand coming over the top, hurts him, follow up, swarms DC, puts him out of there, and we have Steve Miocic back as UFC heavyweight champion. Just your overall thoughts on the fight itself, the in-octagon sort of tactics used by both men.
Yeah, and honestly, by you make mistaking by saying Daniel being Stipe. Honestly, that's what we were all thinking after that first round. No, I mean, good lord, like he dominated him on a level that Stipe's never done. Like just going straight to the MMA technique learning tree and just getting outclassed. And I mean, I'm probably not going to say anything that hasn't been said a bunch of before, already and by Anthony. But I mean, it just as a long time, and I have no problem admitting I'm a total DC fan. Been a supporter of his since watching him on Strike Force in those early days. And like to see a high IQ fighter all of a sudden say that IQ thing, strategy, tactics, I don't want to use that. I'm getting a little bored here. I'm going to try some other things. So for him to kind of just put the kicks in the back pocket, put takedowns in the back pocket, just put general grappling in the back pocket, and get into a striking match with a heavyweight that's proven maybe you can stun him, but has a pretty good chin and serious power all the time to get into that kind of style matchup with him. And I think we talked about it on the podcast, the trenches with Anthony, that and you guys might have talked about it too. Maybe him in that fourth round, maybe taking a round off, or maybe getting tired. Various ideas what the heck happened in that fourth round. But I mean, it was just more surprising, just a surprising thing after that first round and that first fight. It was just really surprising to see it go down like that, especially from a fighter that's so smart, so tactical, seems so ahead of the curve to just kind of give it, like, I don't know. It's just weird thing to watch, honestly.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking maybe post first, second round-ish, I was thinking, DC, he's known to sort of wade into shots, sort of slip and roll with shots, and quite well. I mean, I'll be honest. I thought going well into the third round that DC was not really getting punished that much by much of these shots because whatever he was getting hit with, he was rolling with quite well because that's his bread and butter. But it seemed, again, I watched the fight, once again, and I still, it seems like it's still on a dime. I know there's a lot of credit been put out there for Stipe starting to go the body at like round maybe late second round, early third round. But to be honest, I feel like it was on a dime. He caught him with the body, and it hurt him. And then that right hand came over the top and just hurt him. So it's one of those weird fights where Stipe obviously won in really dramatic fashion. And I do think he did look good in parts, but clearly was getting beat almost in every round. And he seemed to sort of catch DC slipping. And an aging, older DC, it's one of those performances where I don't know really how to rate Stipe going forward in a weird way. I don't know how good he is still, how great he is still. The heavyweight division has never been the best. Even though he had a really good run through the heavyweight division, it was still the heavyweight division, so to speak. And Daniel Cormier, in large aspects, still has beaten Stipe Miocic for most of the time they have fought. So it's a weird dichotomy of performances where Stipe looked fantastic at the end because that finish was amazing. His killer instinct really kicked in there, and every shot was clean, accurate, and powerful when he decided to sort of press the action at the end there. But DC was the better technical fighter still. So if you run it back a third time, I might still pick DC to win it because DC still, if you sort of rating who is better technically, DC still sort of ranks better in almost every category still. It's a weird fight. I can't wait hopefully for the trilogy fight. And on that sort of note, do you think DC takes the trilogy fight? Do you think DC retires? If you are prophesying here, what does DC do?
I'm not really sure because honestly, I kind of feel the opposite way of you. I felt for a long time Stipe Miocic is underrated for his fight IQ,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes a better than average fighter to be able to make adjustments in a fight. And he said in the post fight that he said let me go to the body, let me try this. It was something he was thinking about in the camp, and it worked. And then he worked it heavy in the fourth. Daniel didn't really answer, which was surprising. Didn't go for a takedown or something like that. And then like we kind of know in striking sports, you work the body, you expect the hands to go down, and the hands went down, and he finally got him. But I picked Stipe actually to both of the first two fights. I got it wrong the first time as a Daniel Cormier fan, happily. The second time I got it right. But I don't know. I still feel it all. I don't. It's an interesting thing. Daniel's going to be a bunch more months older. They always say with wrestlers that you often have like back injuries, and he's been around for a long time. Like, what's the wear and tear of a life of collegiate wrestling and the Olympic level wrestling? Part of me almost wonders like if part of his decision making in that fight was maybe his body isn't up to wrestling like it used to be, or maybe it's not up to wrestling against a man of that size who has solid takedown. Like, I'm curious on where he is physically, and mentally. I was curious going to that fight what's the desire? Is it legacy? Maybe a second time will be interesting because he'll be sensing a need to avenge a wrong in his career, and that could be a cause for a lot of fire, a lot of motivation. Excuse me. But that's so trash. But I don't know where I might very well pick Stipe a second time. I mean, there was things in the first fight I liked, and then Daniel got him. And then in the second fight, Stipe made the adjustments. Daniel still hasn't for one round. Yeah, he grappled him, but I'd be curious to see him grapple him in third, fourth round. Can he do it? The gas tank of Daniel has been sometimes it's been solid, but it's not he's not going to put a Khabib pace on somebody. And if he had to grapple with Stipe, who has a solid gas tank for a guy that size, and having to grapple with a guy that size, I don't know. I really feel it's a toss-up again. I felt it a toss-up the first two times, and them having one win each is probably going to make me feel it's going to be a toss-up the third time.
Yeah, and then again, like you said, like DC's aging, so to speak, out of the sport before our eyes. And this fight did feel like that at times, where it felt like this was an older DC fighting that he was trying to fire on all cylinders, and while he was still quite effective, still wasn't really doing everything that he wanted to do in there. You can tell. Like, the shots he was landing were not having the desired effect he thought they were going to have. So I am curious to see the game plan moving forward if they rematch. But digressing from that, obviously, those listening or watching later on, leave a comment down below. What do you want to see for DC? Do you want him to fight Stipe next? Do you want him to try to go down to a 5-fight John Jones? Or do you want him to retire? Do you think this is time for DC to hang it up? And I think a lot of people are going to have that mindset. But yeah,
what do you want to see? Do you want to see John Jones? Do you want to see Stipe D3? What do you want to see retirement? What do you want to see?
I want to see Stipe 3. John Jones trilogy fight. It's just not appealing to me. I'll be quite honest. But he was still beating Stipe until the finish. So it's not like he was getting just demolished round after round and he looked completely old and faded and shot. No, he was winning and he got caught. And the aspects where he looked older was more of the cardio, I think, as you sort of alluded to. The wrestling not being as effective as I think he thought it was going to be. Those things, to me, point to more of an age issue, but he was still the better striker, largely speaking. He was just a little bit irresponsible in the defensive side of it, and I think if he comes in a little more respectful of Stipe, a little more guarded, and honestly just keeping his fucking hands up, it could be a different game. It could be 100% different fight, or it be more of a continuation of that first round, where it was really dominant and it looked like Stipe was not going to make it long in the fight, and he did. All right, now moving to Nate Diaz versus Anthony Pettis. Were you as surprised as I was as how dominant
Yes.
Nate was. And not only that, like, that was perhaps some of the best wrestling we've seen
Yeah.
from Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a real indictment of Anthony Pettis' counter wrestling, or it's just, wow, Nate never lost a beat. He was gone for 3 years, but he was still training, still active, because that's what
Hmm.
the Diaz brothers kind of do.
Hmm.
Except for maybe Nick, who's not looking that great right now. Just being honest. Rough. But Nate, I mean, except for some little moments in the striking where the balance was a little bit off, the
Hmm.
timing was off. I think like in the first half of the second round was rough for him. But overall, dominant performance, perhaps one of the best performances of his career.
Yeah.
Put it right up there with maybe like the Jim Miller performance, the Takanori Gomi performance,
Hmm.
obviously the Don Cerrone performance. You're going to put up there with those as the best Nate Diaz performances.
Not Connor. Wow.
Um, no, because he got beat up a lot in that first round. Like
Yeah, that's true.
this was a lot more of a dominance, I should
Yeah.
say. Like this was one of those where we go, oh wow, Nate could be on a different level. Like he
Hmm.
could be.
Yeah.
And again, I was about to ask, are you as shocked as I was? You said yes. So just go off. Like, how surprised were you while you were watching it? Like, were you like midway fight going like, what am I seeing here? Like, this is like Dominic Cruz versus Mazagaki way back in the day where he just flying knee and
Mm.
knocks him out and like, whoa, that's not supposed to happen. He's supposed to struggle here.
Yeah.
So just your thoughts on the Nate Diaz performance that was utterly impressive.
I was surprised. I mean, on my fight picks for Sherdog, I picked Pettis. I had an awful night picking fights on that
Everyone
Sherdog staff picks. I felt we talked about on the trenches that week that the question was, oh, could he come back and could he be not be a victim of ring rust? And I felt he could. I felt he's just that special kind of guy. I figured he would come in and still be good and competitive. I didn't know. I mean, if he won, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked, but I didn't expect him to win like that. I thought Anthony Pettis stylistically was a tough fight for him. I felt it was akin to like the Josh Thompson that Jay Petrie, our editor, brought up on the podcast, and stuff like that. And I felt it would be a tough matchup for him. But that said, I did feel Nate picked this fight for a reason. Nate knew this guy would stand with him. He wasn't going to try to wrestle him, even though he likes to talk shit about people wrestling. He did the wrestling and grappling, which is the hypocritical Nick Diaz brother nonsense. But he did it, and I know he probably thought, I'm going to push the pace on this guy, and this is a guy that has shown a history of not being good against that, having a questionable gas tank. So that's why I won't get too crazy about, oh man, maybe Nate's a contender now, because Nate's been known to have these performances, and then when he gets a big test, he doesn't deliver. So I'm not ready to put him in the conversation contender. If he beats a Jorge Masvidal or something like that, then that'll be interesting. But yeah, totally, really surprised. Not necessarily shocked, like I didn't think it was possible, but surprised that he really worked over Anthony Pettis. I mean, just really impressive. I mean, I think you nailed it. Like, this is definitely one of the best performances of his career, and it may be the best just because dude's been off like 3 years. Anthony Pettis is still a good fighter. Anthony Pettis, you had this question about the Stephen Thompson, he was losing that fight and then came out with some magic late, but he's still a very good fighter. Was a former champion, was a contender. So to put it on him like that, impressive. Just amazing and fun to watch.
Now, obviously, like you said, Jorge Masvidal seems to be the next fight for Nate. Even
assuming the UFC doesn't screw it up for all of us.
Assuming, but even Dana's saying like it makes sense, so that's a good sign. Him saying that Nate is now a needle mover. All great signs in terms of giving Nate enough power, or at least him feeling like he's in charge and power, where he's comfortable signing contracts and fighting and everything like that. I think we get Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal. However, wow, that is a tough fight for Nate Diaz, because Jorge Masvidal, I think, does a lot of things that the Diaz brothers do, but I think he does it better. I think his boxing's better.
Yep.
I think his wrestling's better. I think the only thing that may be not as traditionally good as Nate Diaz is the jiu-jitsu. Like we saw with Anthony Pettis, Nate Diaz is still a phenom on the ground in terms of Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Is he better than Damian Maia? Probably not.
Probably not.
And he survived Damian Maia.
But I will say this. From a pure, like, on paper perspective, Damian Maia, of course, is better. However, Nate in 2019 might be better than Damian Maia circa 2018 or 2017, whenever they fought, right? I just think that comparatively speaking, you might have a tougher overall product combined with the jiu-jitsu of Nate Diaz than Damian Maia when Masvidal fought Maia. However, I just to table that because also Maia's traditionally a really bad wrestler. Nate Diaz had some decent wrestling in this fight, so it's hard to say that. I do think Masvidal, when it comes to just pure stand-up, should be able to piece up Nate Diaz. I think
And he's good going back too.
Nate Diaz, while he is traditionally very good in the old school, like head to the chest clinch style of boxing, that old school gritty style, he's very great at that. He's accurate. His volume, of course, is legendary.
Yeah.
But Masvidal has more levels to his striking. And on top of that, can also do that. Like if they're in the clinch, dirty boxing, Masvidal can still win that battle.
Yep.
Pettis could never have won that battle.
Nah, it's not his style.
That's the difference. So I think it's a tough matchup. However, I think we all agree it's a tough matchup for Nate Diaz. I think we can also agree that Masvidal is probably the favorite in that fight. However, do we think that the UFC makes it a pay-per-view main event? Do you think we see that be the main event on top of Nunes versus JDR in December? Is that possible?
Nah, I mean they wouldn't go about, and we talked about this on the podcast too. Like I don't think they would put it over a title match, and nor should they. You know, we should still have prestige to the titles and title matches. I dig. Just put it on a card where there's no title matches. Just make it a pay-per-view stack card in the main event. But I mean, even before putting a main event, I don't know if it's gonna happen. We all were hoping, we all wanted Cerrone McGregor. Didn't happen. You know, there's so many times there's fights out there that seem so damn obvious. And especially when it comes to a Diaz brother. Yes, he just came back. But let's not crazy think, oh, he's going to fight like one more time this year, 3 times next year. This guy just left for 3 years because he was like, no, this ain't doing it for me. I'm not digging this. So I'm not going to be worth it. And because Nate Diaz knows his value. I mean, supposedly he made like what 20 million in the Conor fight, like a huge sum of money. Like he knows his value. He has money. He doesn't seem like a guy that's splurging and living a wild life. So he knows his value. He will fight under the right situation and conditions. Now this feels like the right conditions, but also Jorge Masvidal has been saying it too. He wants to be paid right. So you have two guys who know their value. Everybody wants it. So smartly, as an athlete, they're gonna push for the most money possible. Will the UFC feel they are worth it? And boy, man, I know Dana said, oh, that's the good stuff about Nate, but he says a lot of good stuff about people after event, and then it soon changes. You know, he seems to like them now, but when they start giving prices he doesn't feel that he wants to pay, I mean, it can change things real quick. So if my gut, the way things are, I would say, I'll say it now, the fight doesn't happen.
Oh, why? Why use this? No.
Oh, wow.
So depressing.
Yeah.
But
So
I will
that's
say,
right
you
there.
do have a really great point because I've never seen a fighter in UFC history talk the way Jorge Masvidal did to the media at UFC 241. The way he talked about his leverage, his sort of power in the negotiation room with the UFC is perhaps unique in UFC history. In terms of at least being public with it. Maybe guys like BJ Penn, Randy Couture, back in the day in private said stuff like this. But Masvidal's out there at a UFC sort of media, not event, it's a UFC fight, but he's with the media, you know, in front of the banner, UFC banner, and saying, no, I'm worth the money. If the UFC's not going to give me money, then fuck them, blah, 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 blah. And that is unique. And he did it in a way that is, it's just a little bit different than the Diaz brothers, because the Diaz brothers aren't as articulate as Masvidal is. You know, just being honest. But Masvidal came across like he might really be able to push the levers here in terms of negotiation because he seems uniquely in a position to take control. And on top of that, he is fully aware of it, and he seems intelligent enough to take advantage of it. I am intrigued when it comes to these negotiations for a Nate Diaz or a Masvidal fight. Because you're right. If you're a betting person, the favorite is this fight doesn't happen. We get another year off from Nate Diaz, most likely.
Yeah, because historically the UFC doesn't like when people push them. The only person that's really been ever able to push them and get what he wants is Connor. He's the only guy that can continually renegotiate contract and get what he wants. Outside of that, I mean, Nate was able to have leverage just because they really needed him in a pinch, and then everybody wanted the second fight, so they were willing to pay for it because of how the demand. But they usually don't like when people push them money wise, and especially with I almost feel what exactly you're saying, like all that fantastic stuff Masvidal is doing, it's gonna further push that fight from happening.
Yes,
He's going public
I can see that
saying
happening. Yeah,
Dana's like, oh, he's gonna say this, he should get this. He wants, it just they'll do weird things to spite themselves just so they can, show the stroke. And it's just, like I said, Conor Cerrone should have been a no-brainer. It's the one time it seemed like Conor won the fight that didn't have anything to do with the title, and it still couldn't be made. So, yeah.
shout out to Dana White and UFC matchmaking overall. Moving on though, Paulo Costa won in a surprisingly controversial decision, though I didn't think it was that controversial against Yo Romero. And God, this was fantastic. This wasn't maybe everything I wanted. I definitely wanted a finish. I was expecting the finish to happen, and it didn't happen. However, that's in large part due to both guys being insanely tough and durable.
Yeah.
And on top of that, Paulo Costa really impressed with his boxing strategy and technique, because he was dedicated to the body, dedicated with his combination work.
Yeah.
And even though Romero was countering him at times, being difficult, he never let off. He kept walking him down, kept going to the body, and kept throwing in combination, and that is key. On top of that, Costa's counter wrestling was fantastic. Like every time Romero shot for takedown, Costa defended it. Every single time Costa defended a takedown. And that was insanely surprising. Romero is perhaps the best wrestler that MMA has ever seen. And Costa really defended every takedown with ease, to be quite honest. Your thoughts on the fight and the performance of Boachina?
I feel differently on Romero's wrestling. Romero is one of those guys, and we've actually seen it a lot in MMA, that you'll get a guy, and it shows you how special the sport is. You'll get a guy that his credentials are off the charts, like this guy,
Yes.
the medalist in the Olympics and whatnot, that they can't transition it well. Like if you look at Romero's history, he's made his bones and made his career on being a really spectacular athletic striker and an unbelievable finisher. His wrestling has been fairly I wouldn't say non-existent, but underutilized for the most part, because I just feel like he hasn't been able to really transition it, and maybe he's just not interested in transitioning it. I remember Derek Brunson fighting him. Derek Brunson out wrestling him, which is saying something. So I mean, I wouldn't go, I wouldn't put too much in the Costa takedown defense, but I will. What you said about his toughness, I think that was one of the most impressive things. We never saw Costa in a firefight. He goes in and destroys. He's been a wrecking ball. So to get serious resistance, a guy talking shit in his face, sticking out the tongue, all these things like that impressed me. Like he showed mental fortitude, physical fortitude, and that's the things you need if you're going to go the highest levels. I mean, Israel Adesanya showed it to us all against Gaslam. He got serious resistance. 5th round, he fought like a champion. So Costa fought like a champion in those last rounds, even though he probably lost the last round. And I really need to go back and watch it. I felt Romero won, but I have to go back. Maybe I'm buying in too much into the emotion. But just amazing fight. It just it makes you, those kind of fights to me almost feel like, and we talked about it on the podcast, that why aren't there like more 10-10 rounds, or just like 9-9, just like this, like certain rounds, like that second round is where it really gets iffy for me. If more people lean to Costa in that second, I get it, but it's a kind of round where it's like, I don't know, 10-10, I just don't know. So I'm not like, oh, well, he got a takedown late, or, oh, he did this early, but amazing fight. Both men showed why they're both special, and Romero at 42, still doing what he does. It's just, and I've never seen a fighter like him. Honestly, there's times he just looks ugly. He just looks like a whack fighter sometimes. And then there's other times like, oh, there's nobody in the sport that can do this right now. He's one unique. Of the most just completely unique fighters of this generation of fighters.
Emmanuel Augustus, the boxer from way back in the day, the Drunken Master.
The name sounds familiar, but I can't like picture him.
If you go and watch videos of him, you're gonna know exactly who I'm talking about. Romero is that, but
Mm.
actually talented. You know what I mean? Like he just goes in there and does whatever he wants to do, and
Yeah.
it's ugly at times. And
Yes.
he's such a weird guy. Like having interviewed him finally, I think I now
Hmm.
have a beat on him where he's just a whacked out individual. He has not a few screws loose. He has all the screws loose.
So he's in that Diego Sanchez realm.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Wow,
the
that's saying
the
something.
the difference is that Romero is a freak athlete with
Hmm.
freak athletic talent and ability. Um, and on top of that, obviously the wrestling credentials. So it's just he's this package. When you add in the insane factor, like mentally
Yeah,
insane, he's just gonna act that way in the cage as well.
yeah.
I've seen like old like highlights of him wrestling, and he did weird shit back then too. Like he was just that guy. But obviously, Costa wins moving forward. He's probably going to fight the winner of Whitaker
Yeah.
Adesanya, and I think he should be the underdog in both matchups because of the gas tank he showed in the third round or the lack thereof
Yeah.
against Romero.
Which we always wonder about with his
Absolutely.
muscularity.
However, his striking and overall grappling ability to me showed that those first 2.5 rounds with either Whitaker or Adesanya, whoever wins that fight, he could win those fights.
Hmm.
Like those are going to be very dangerous periods of time for both Whitaker and Adesanya. The only maybe hope is that Casa didn't have the earth-shattering power against the very top level, like he did against the lower level.
Yeah.
Maybe that continues against Whitaker and Adesanya, or maybe he finds the power again because Romero is just a god among men and he can take any sort of punishment there is in the world. And Adesanya and Whitaker can't. But in my thinking, I think they can probably take his shots.
Mm.
And we could see a really tough 2 rounds for both guys, or whoever wins that fight against Costa. And then third, fourth, and fifth round, see that turn for both guys. How do you see Costa sort of matching up with either one of those guys, Whitaker or Adesanya?
It's fascinating because oh man, I think honestly, if we're looking like overall skills, I still feel Robert Whitaker's the better fighter of the two of him and Adesanya. And Robert
Yes.
Whitaker, I think, has been just a soundly underrated champion during his run. He should really be like a top 5 rank in pound for pound. Like he's really, really good. But for this particular matchup, I feel like Adesanya may be a tougher matchup because Adesanya's his quickness, his reflexes, his ability to make people look really bad standing when he's really on his game. And I feel like there's parts of if he can weather that early storm and be careful with Costa, I could see him just really outclassing him on the feet. And that's the kind of guy like Adesanya is still at a point in his career where if you can have some good grappling and pull out some nice takedowns and trips, stuff like that, that would be worthwhile. I don't know if that's in Costa's repertoire. It might be. Maybe he's a better grappler. He hasn't shown it offensively, but and I think that might be something Whitaker shows because Whitaker's so smart that he's such a well-rounded fighter. He might pop out a takedown, a trip, or whatever during that fight just to keep, Adesanya thinking. And he's like a Frankie Edgar type. But of the two, I feel like even though Whitaker has showed such a toughness, I feel like Costa could get to him. Especially, I wonder about Whitaker, going forward. His body just seems to be wearing down. He's having difficulty staying healthy. He's been in 2 absolute wars. Those have to take an effect on you. He's only getting older. I feel like there's a slowdown in him. And
Yes.
that makes it easier for Costa to catch up and really hit him and get to him early. Like I wouldn't be surprised he got to him and knocked him out second round, something like that, and stopped him. Adesanya, I feel like he's just hitting that prime, only getting better. I want to see where he goes from that Gaslam fight, where he goes confidence wise as a champion going through the fire. He may come out the end of that even better.
Yeah, he might.
So I feel Adesanya would be a clear favorite against Costa. Even though it might be pickup, I can see the Bay lines being a real pickup,
Yeah.
and then Whitaker. I think Costa can get to Whitaker, so I'm curious who wins because either way, it's going to be a treat for us because it's great to see the middleweight have like these phenomenal talents at the top level.
Remember middleweight in like circa 2006?
Oh my god, when guys like fucking like Talis Lattis and oh man, what's this guy that the guy that fought Anderson that actually had him in full mount? Travis Luter getting title shots
Patrick
and
Cote,
Cote, the champion, was so bored he had to go up to the other upper division twice just to keep himself busy.
James
Yeah,
Irvin.
yes, it was weak, and it's nice to see that the talent is
Bad.
really filling out big time in that division. And plus, two of the best fighters in the division were former welterweights, which shows you, this trend of more guys just going up, maybe looking less impressive physically, is probably really the better thing.
I agree, absolutely. Any sort of other standout fighters or fights on the card that you want to sort of mention?
No, I mean,
Sanhagen, had a good performance.
He's phenomenal. Yeah, that's a guy he's really an amazing talent because he's such a weird mix of various guys. Like I know you said Dominic Cruz is a big influence on him. You feel a little Dominic Cruz with his changing of stance and his footwork, but he's got like a gaminess of like a BJ Penn. It comes forward, but then he uses his length really well, like
almost like a Tony Ferguson. Like Tony Ferguson,
yeah.
It's like Tony Ferguson will use his length in such a fluid way, and I see Sanhagen do that at times, where he'll flow from kicks and punches in terms of combinations, and he uses it to extend the length and also to sort of move his opponent around at the same time. It's really tactically intelligent when what he does. Sanhagen's going to go far. I'm really intrigued by just the bantamweight division right now. Aljamain Sterling on the comeback, Peter Yan. Even Uriah Faber looked pretty decent against Ricky Simone of all possibility. Frank Yeager moving down, Dominic Cruz coming back. Bantamweight's looking interesting right now, and obviously Triple C cringe champion himself.
Oh God,
Henry Cejudo, the legend.
Let's go away from the crit. I want to go back to Sanhagen, something I actually like at this point right now.
Sadiq Usif, I want brief mention. Sadiq Usif looked fantastic as well. Yeah. Derek Brunson, I thought he looked good.
I interviewed Heinisch. He's the guy on the rise. Everybody's behind him, and Derek Brunson, he's not gone away yet. He's not a gatekeeper yet. He's still he's not a contender, but he ain't done in terms of don't overlook that guy at this point.
I thought we were gonna get like a Jack Hermanson and like Ian Heinisch title contender fight at some point, right? Of like guys that no one cares about, but they're just too talented to put away. No,
you know what's also crazy is Derek Brunson's the one guy who goes to Henry Hooft, one of the best striking coaches in the sport, who everybody raves about, and Derek Brunson is pretty much still Derek Brunson somehow.
I'll be honest,
didn't change at all. He just won. It was just better.
Henry Hooft is a little bit overrated as a striking coach. I will say that. I'll give that hot take out there because I'll be honest. A lot of the guys that go to Henry Hooft don't really improve that much. I'm just going to say that. If you really go down the list, I'm just saying, look at all.
He's got a few champions. Though.
He does. No, he has talented fighters, of course.
Yes.
But, look at the Black Zillions back in the day when Henry Hooft was there. Look at Rashad Evans.
They were good for a while, and then,
But look at their striking in particular. It did not improve. It did not change at all. However, digressing from that, looking towards this weekend, Bellator obviously is this weekend. Jason, break down Bellator kovly if you want. I'm not going to watch it. You know me.
What?
Just being honest.
Trash.
Hey, look, I got Kovalev Yard on ESPN Plus tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Okay, so I got high level boxing early. Okay.
All right. So Bellator 225. It's honestly it's a sneaky, really good card. I've been able to. I did the media day yesterday. I'll be at the event tomorrow. Absolute bucket list moment of my MMA, journalism career. Got to speak to Scott Coker. You can go look that up on Sherdog. Got to ask him a lot of questions. As a longtime Strikeforce fan, now super cool. But this card is really good. I mean, the main card, you got Mitrione and Karatanov, which is a very fan-friendly strikers fight. If you didn't see the first time, Mitrione kicked Karatanov right in the sack, 15 seconds in the fight, ended the fight. So this is running it back on a weird scenario, but that's still a fun fight. You got Minakov, the former heavyweight champion, fighting Javi Ayala. That's a fun fight. Javi Ayala is a young, good, rising talent for them. But Minakov, the Sambo champ, he's probably going to take him down and beat him up. But it should be fun while last. You got Alejandro Lara, David Rickles, and Yaroslav Amoslov. That should be a fun, interesting fight. And the thing is, the card showcases a lot of Bellator's rising young talent, like Terrell Fortune, who I got to interview. My God, Some of these Bellator, these heavyweights, and I'm a small guy, I'm a short guy, but still, these guys are so fucking massive. Terrell Fortune, Minikov, they're freaking massive human beings. But you got Conry Gracie, this guy Hoist Gracie's son, he's on the card. You got Austin Vanderford, aka Mrs. Paige Van Zandt. I mean Mr. Paige Van Zandt, but he's actually a very good fighter. He's on the card.
Yeah. I'm shocked he didn't get the UFC contract. I'll be honest.
Yeah. I mean, you got Ricky Bandejas, Mike Kimball, and then you got Nick Newell, who's taking his fight deal opportunity into this. Seeing if he can land that long-term deal finally with a major promotion, or if Corey Browning beats him. Corey Browning adds his name to that list of rising talents because he beat Kimbo's son, he beat Aaron Chalmers, and if he beats Nick Newell, who's a big jump up, he even admitted to me he's a big jump up from. It's a good card. It's got a lot of good talent on it, and it's a worthwhile watch.
Like you said, sneaky card with some underrated guys
from
top to bottom, it seems. And plus Nick Newell on it, I'll probably tune in just for him. I'll be honest. I'm always
it's a hell of a story.
Since we're on the topic of Bellator, I've wanted to ask you about this since you're the Bellator guy. You're the
I think I'm the one championship guy in Anthony's eyes these days.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. A little bit of a Paige shill, But the Viacom CBS merger that is most likely going through. Obviously, Viacom majority owners of Bellator. Is it possible that we see a Scott Coker Bellator move and Scott Coker back to Showtime, which is owned by CBS, and then Viacom obviously will be owning or at least merging with CBS at that time? So is that anywhere possible? Because I'll be honest, Paramount Network is atrocious. I never go to Paramount Network in my life. If the Bellator
you don't watch
card
Bar Rescue.
if I want to see a Bellator card, it better be on DAZN. Otherwise, I'm not going to see it because I'm not going to go to Paramount Network. But I have Showtime. Showtime Boxing is obviously kind of falling apart as we speak. So just in your mindset, in terms of your industry in the know information, do you think it's possible to see that move in, let's say, the next few years?
I wish I could have a more definitive answer because I had that question in my list of questions for Coker, but they started giving me the play the Oscar music off. I was the last guy at that moment, so I had to finish. I couldn't ask that, but I think it makes so much sense since there is previous history there with Strikeforce, Elite XC, all those kinds of things when they used to do the Strikeforce, Elite XC, co-promotion. Yep. So I think that's entirely possible. I didn't know about what you're saying with Showtime, that the Showtime Boxing having problems. So that's interesting. That makes more reason to bring more of another credible combat sports brand onto the network. And then we talked about it on our me and Anthony's podcast maybe like 5 months ago that there was rumors surrounding Paramount possibly selling Bellator, which obviously looked to not be true now. But if there was any smoke to that fire and Paramount isn't too interested in keeping them there, maybe, it makes more sense to have it on Showtime and then, or maybe, you see a CBS card or something like that. So it seems very logical and it seems very likely, but who's to say? Maybe someone who's making decisions now, like, whoa, we can't take Bellator for Paramount. Matt's not watching it. If Bellator's not on at all, who's going to watch it at all? So, they may look at that as like, we can't take that off of that channel because that channel will be really fucked. I mean, Bar Rescue is good, but it ain't going to be enough. So, but yeah, I think it's, if the merger goes through and I had to take a guess, I'd put it as, 40% chance it could possibly happen.
If you get the chance, sometime, fight week, obviously with Stoker, ask him that question. I'm curious. Phrase it this way, Coker. Would you like to go back to Showtime? Like, would that be something you'd be intrigued by? Like you obviously had a great relationship over there with them. You had great success over there. Built up a lot of the stars that we see in the UFC.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that could happen for Bellator again to go back to Showtime?
He'll probably be at the post fight, I would imagine. So it's definitely a question I gotta ask.
And even if it's like off camera, off the record, like I want to know. I want to know.
I actually have an off-camera question I have for him, and it's regarding Eddie Alvarez.
Off-camera questions are always the best. You always get some really great answers. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen, for our MMA sort of content for today. Obviously, thank you. Share the show, like the video, all that fun stuff. Jason Burgos at Cheap Seats.
No Spider-Man talk?
No, we're separate video. Separate video. Don't worry. Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm
Don't
sorry.
worry.
I
So
didn't know you had it so organized.
for those that are listening now in post, when you eventually watch this video, head over to Training Now Network, because by the time this video is released, the Spider-Man video is going to be released, where me and Jason break down the divorce of MCU and Sony, and it's heartbreaking. Also talking about the slate of shows that the MCU is bringing out: Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, thank the Lord, and also Matrix 4, I guess, because we got to talk about that. But Jason, let the people know where to find you and all your content.
Cheap Seats Chat on Instagram and Twitter. Got a whole bunch of stuff on Sherdog right now. Interviews with Coker, Vitaly Minikov, Sergey Karatanov, Mitrione, the very, very lovely Alejandro Lara, Taylor Turner, Browning, Newell, a whole bunch of fighters up there right now. And also 2 fighters that were on Combate Americas in there, the main event and co-main event for the titles that is going on right now as we're recording this. So all that over on Sherdog, tons of videos and some interesting stuff probably hopefully coming next week too. And look for my tweets at Bellator from Press Row at Bellator 225 tomorrow night.
Thank you, Jason, for giving me your time today. Always appreciate it, man. And also, thank God Ant wasn't on this show.
Trash. He would have ruined it.
Trash. Peace.